Hi guys, welcome back to Read Instead. I'm Jake. Glad to have you here today. Today we're going to review The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. Stick around. Okay, my friends, my fellow readers, continuing on with my 5-star reads, that brings us today to 1989's The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. I only have a couple more of these 5-star reads left, and then I'm really going to start mixing up the videos. I am going to continue to review books, all the books that I've read, because why not? Just because it wasn't one of the best books I've ever read, it still could be maybe one of the best books you ever read. And also I have a lot of 4-star reads that I enjoyed. Where do I begin with this? That's the question. I sat here for about a minute and a half, 2 minutes before I pressed record for this video, and I was thinking of where to start. And this is where I'm going to start. I am going to start where this novel starts. And sometimes, if I, usually similar to when you're watching a movie, within the first 10 minutes, something happens, some sort of storyline sort of takes root, and it gets its foundation, and that's what hooks you. And I'm just going to give you the first few pages of this book, and I'll expound a little more as time goes on. This book is I love this book. I love this book, and if I ever do a top 10 favorite novels of all time, I won't tell you where this will land on it, but it'll certainly be on there. I'll do that video, by the way. I told myself that I would do that video when I reach 10,000 subscribers, if that ever happens. I'm completely content if it doesn't, by the way, but I just want to get people reading, that's all. This novel takes place in the 1100s in England. I guess that's considered medieval time. And there's a man, and his name is Tom Builder, and he has a family. He has a wife, and he has a son, a teenage son, and his wife is pregnant. And they are on a journey through the woods. Everything is a journey back in those days. When you had to just go to the next town, it was a journey, and they're in a forest, and there's bandits and marauders everywhere. I've read multiple books that take place during this time, and that seems like that was sort of a common thing, where they were just sort of woods people, forest people that would, rob and steal and violently assault people. So you were constantly on the lookout and on the defensive for things like this. The wife, the mother of the family, goes into labor. And the baby is delivered, but because of they didn't have any technology then, there was no medical care or anything like that, and this woman is having a baby in the middle of the forest with just her husband and teenage son nearby. She loses her life in the process of delivering the baby. The baby's healthy, and the next thing that happens is tragic but understandable. And what happens is the father and the teenage boy are left here after a traumatic event. The mother is dead, his wife is dead, and he's holding this brand new baby. You can imagine like 1100s, the umbilical cord's probably still attached, and the afterbirth is on the ground. It's like just sort of dire circumstances. And the father knows that there's no way for him to care for this baby. He doesn't have, he can't produce breast milk or the nutrients and things that this brand new born baby needs, just minutes old. And he makes the very difficult decision to bury the baby, or he buries his wife. He doesn't fill the hole back in, and he just places the baby with the mother in the grave and walks away. take that for what it is. You know what I mean? Whether you say that's crazy, why would somebody do that? It's because he knew that the baby under his care would die eventually in probably just a couple days. That's what the rationale was. So he figured that the child, his brand new baby, might as well die with the mother who has already passed away. So some time passes, and now just him and his son are leaving the forest, or they're continuing on through the forest, and some hours pass, and the heavy sense of conviction and remorse and regret starts to sink in on this father. And he makes a decision. He basically says, well, what I did was wrong there. I'm still, I need to protect my child. We're going to turn around and we're going to grab that baby. We're going to take it with us. And if it dies in a couple days, at least it dies. At least I'll have a clear conscience. It'll be with me, and it'll be with one living parent as the baby dies. And when they return to the burial site of the wife and his brand new baby child, the wife is there, still dead, but the baby isn't there. What had happened was a local monk, a priest from a monastery, discovered the scene and took the baby into its care. And that's where I'm going to stop there, because I don't want to give you any more. That's just that's one half of 1%, out of 100 of what this book entails. The bigger picture, the grand scheme of things, there's a beautiful plot that is woven throughout this whole story. Different characters have different standings in life. Tom Builder and his family are a central central characters and point of view. Also, the monastery that I told you that this baby ends up being taken to is plays a vital role, and eventually a cathedral is being built under the watch and delegation of this monastery, and because of the resources and the political aspects that go into building a cathedral, a lot of politicians and bishops and archbishops and all these these sorts of people, which were sort of just like politicians in this day as well. The religious leaders of this time period were they were basically just politicians. It was just a separation. They weren't of the state. They were of the church, but the church held the same amount of power as the state, the government, if not more. And a lot of these sort of politicians, and again these religious figures, get involved in the workings of the monastery. And basically, what I love about this book is that each character, just about each character, has a defined motivation. They have a defined motivation, and the characters are, I will say, like, most of the characters are sort of black and white, and which is fine with me. And some of the politicians, they're just trying to gain power and move up the ranks to gain more power. They're so power hungry, and they put on sort of this cloak of religious love and caring for your fellow man and stuff like that. But really, Ken Follett shows you their motivations clearly, and they're just hungry for more power, and they want to go through they'll go through any lengths sort of to get it. I will say that I just remembered as I told you the first little bit. That's actually after the prologue of this book. There's a prologue that happens, and it's very quick. It's just a few pages where there is an execution, a hanging that takes place of a man. Oh, man, I could talk about this book all day. Ken Follett is a master. This is historical fiction, right? We've talked a lot on this channel about historical fiction in my past videos. It's a genre that I love and I'm familiar with. Ken Follett is the best at it. He's a master at it. Apparently, at some point in the 1100s, there was a ship going from England to France, as ships often did, back then. And the monarchy was on the ship, and the ship was caught in a storm, and everybody on board died, save for one. There was one just sort of boatsman, basically, that survived the storm and the sinking of the ship. But anyway, that created sort of a vacuum in the leadership of England, and new leadership needed to be installed. So basically, how I said that there was that one surviving boatsman, he came back and he had a story of what happened on the ship, and they ended up putting him to death. I won't give any more away, because what that did was create a complete clean slate by charging him with erroneous charges and putting him to death. Basically created a complete clean slate for a new leadership in England, and a lot of that vying for power and the new leadership sort of being installed in England at that time takes place in this book. I could talk about multiple characters. Just for the sake of the length of this video, I want to keep it to one. There's one character, and really he's one of my favorite characters in literature, and that is a man by the name of Prior Philip. And Prior Philip runs that monastery that I told you about earlier, the monastery that the baby who was left for dead, ends up at. He runs this monastery, and I'll just say this: I could talk for a long time about Prior Philip, but a lot of us enjoy sort of conflicted characters, morally gray characters. And when it comes to characters who only have compassionate and pure and morally good motivations, right? Good characters, when they have nothing that no sort of character flaws and stuff like that, they can seem sort of boring and mundane and not interesting. Well, what Ken Follett does, to this character that he creates in Prior Philip, is there is none of that. He doesn't have any character defects, and all of his motivations are pure, and he's a very caring man, and his religious and spiritual beliefs are completely genuine, and I love this character, Prior Philip, and the things that he does out of compassion. And it's like the opposite of corny. If you guys can if you could just look up the antonym to corny, it's the opposite of that. It's so good. He's such a good man, and the stuff that he does, there's a scene in this book about maybe 3/4 of the way through where he comes upon a vagabond, naked man on a trail of a road, and he's like, this guy's on death's door. You know what I mean? He's like stripped of everything. He's got nothing left, and he's homeless. And turns out when he takes a closer look to examine this man, this was a former fellow priest at the monastery, and this guy did every single thing he could to sort of backbite and murmur and spread false accusations and paint Prior Philip in a bad light. And so, like, years and years down the road, he sees this guy, and what he does, he just shows this guy compassion. he shows this guy compassion. He picks him up and he gets off his horse and he puts him on the horse. And like, I don't want to give too much of the scene away. And there's some dialogue that takes place that is so touching and so moving that I'll never forget it. It's a scene that I'll never forget. Guys, I could go on and on about this book. It's obviously it's like 900 pages, so there's a lot of plot. It never drags. It's gut wrenching at times. It'll melt your heart. There's a lot of love in this book. There's love affairs. There's loss, grief, sorrow, political maneuvering. It goes back and forth between the big sort of grand picture. You get the bird's eye view of everything that's going on, but then Ken Follett will just dial right into a room at a bishop's headquarters, and the dialogue that's taking place, and you start to motivations that start to get unveiled and whatnot, and it's just a beautiful book. I mean, it sold like 27 million copies. As you guys, I've shared with you before, Ken Follett was a prolific and well reviewed and renowned thriller writer for the majority of his early career. And then, if I remember correctly, I've heard him talk about it where, something with his publisher in the mid-'80s, he said that I have this idea that I want to sort of make this historical fiction drama, I guess, if you will. And his publisher they were sort of weary about it. They said, well, you're so good at writing these thrillers, why don't you just keep at it? But and then it turns out that the historical fiction 900-page drama that he created ends up being his highest selling novel and one of the highest selling novels of all time. Ken Follett's The Pillars of the Earth. Like I said before, I could go on and on about this novel. I love it, and I know I'm not alone in that. Look all over BookTube and YouTube, and you'll see that a lot of people who have read this book really enjoy it. So I would encourage you guys to read it. It's a little bit of an investment just because it's 900 pages, but I don't think you'll regret it. And I certainly couldn't imagine most people getting to just the 50th, page 50 of this book and not being intrigued and wanting to put it down. So that's what I offer to you today. The Pillars of the Earth by Ken Follett. I'll see you guys next time.